Welcome back, everyone, to Ein Sof Learning. I hope everyone's having an amazing day. In last week's episode, we were talking about the meaning of the word avir rekani, empty air, in Kabbalah. Avir rekani, we decided, or Rav Ashlag taught us, means or chasadim, which is lacking or chokhmah. Or chasadim corresponds to the light which encapsulates the light of God, being or chokhmah. Or chokhmah is or Ein Sof. It's the essence of the Partsuf, while or chasadim is the external garment that allows the or chokhmah to reveal itself within the Partsuf. Now, just to make that a little bit more practical, because that was very mystical and complicated, your body is compared to or chasadim, while your soul is or chokhmah. The soul cannot integrate with this world except through the body, being the clothing for the soul. So there's two aspects to every spiritual system, the internal and the external. That is the meaning of avir rekani, which is a kli, a vessel, which is lacking its internal substance. That's why it's called rekan. Rekan means it's empty. It's like a body without a soul. That did not exist before the creation of the worlds. The concept of lack. But there's two types of lack. One of them is what we've just mentioned, avir rekani. That did not exist before the creation of the worlds, meaning before tzimtzum, which is the point in which God contracted his light and created the worlds inside of that empty space which remained. Now Rav Ashlag is going to teach us the meaning of chalal, void. This too did not exist before the tzimtzum. So let's get right into it. כדי להסביר המילה הזאת, צריך שתדע מקודם מהו מהותו של כלי רוחני. Before we're able to describe or explain the meaning of this word, we must know in advance the essence of a spiritual vessel. How do we say vessel in Hebrew? Kli. A kli. It's an acronym actually for Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. Kohanim, Leviim, and Israelim make up the vessel of God. They are the kli within which the light of God, which means the or Ein Sof, needs to be revealed. And they are the conduits, which means that they are the channels through which the light reaches the rest of the world. והוא כי בהיות הנאצל מקבל את שפע חיותו מן המאציל. And it is that when the Ne'etzal receives its sustenance from the Ma'atzil, בהשתוקקות לקבל את שפעו זה ממנו יתברך. Whenever the Ne'etzal, which is the recipient of the light, receives the shefa, which means the sustenance or the abundance, meaning the light that's coming down to him, he necessarily has a desire to receive it. He has to have a longing, hishtokekut, which means a yearning or a longing, a craving, to receive that shefa from him, from the ma'atzil. Ma'atzil is the one giving the light, ne'etzal is the one receiving the light. The receiver, by necessity, has a desire to receive the light in order to receive. You cannot receive just by talking. No, you can't say, I want to connect to God, and therefore you immediately connect to God. That's not how things work. There has to be a genuine and authentic desire to receive the light. Vetada, and you should know, asher midat haratzon v'hishtokekut hazeh, that the measure of this desire and yearning, hi klalot kol hachomer shebene'etzal, is the entire substance of the ne'etzal. Remember, ne'etzal is the recipient. So the entire substance of the recipient is defined by its desire to receive, by the measure of its desire to receive. באופן שכל מה שיש בנאצל זולת זה החומר כבר אינו מיוחס לבחינת החומר שלו, אלא לבחינת השפע שלו שמקבל מן המאציל. And everything besides this desire, everything besides this chomer, this substance of the ne'etzal, which is defined by the measure of its ratzon lekabel, is defined by the shefa, that by the light, the abundance which it receives from the ma'atzil. So there's only two categories within a spiritual system. There's the chomer, which means the substance of the vessel, being defined by its measure of desire to receive it, the light. And then there's the aspect of the shefa, which it receives from the ma'atzil. So there's two aspects. There's the recipient, and then there's what he receives. There's the vessel, and there's what's inside the vessel, being defined by the kli and shefa. Those are the two aspects that we're referring to here. Velo od, and not only that, ela shehachomer hazeh hu hamoded et gedolato v'shiur komato shel kol ne'etzal. But this chomer, this substance, is the entire measure of the greatness of this ne'etzal. The measure or the level of this recipient, of this vessel, is defined by the measure of its desire. Okay, let's pause for a second and discuss what that might mean. Moshe Rabbeinu is the greatest prophet in the entire world. Moses. He's the leader of the nation of Israel. But he's also inclusive of all of the souls of Israel. Why? Because he has the greatest ratzon, the greatest desire. The 600,000 neshamot of Am Yisrael are included within the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. Whenever we learn Torah, who are we connecting to? Who are we receiving from? Moshe Rabbeinu. Whenever you learn Torah, ultimately, it's Moses' wisdom. Now it's coming from Hashem through Moses, but nevertheless, you're directly receiving it from Moses. The measure of the desire to receive defines the greatness of something, of a vessel. That's why Moses was the greatest prophet, because he had the greatest desire, the greatest capacity, the greatest vessel that was capable of receiving the Torah. It was so great that he was capable, he was the one that was chosen to receive the Torah. Veshel kol partzuf. And this applies to every single partzuf as well. The measure of the desire to receive, vekol sefirah, and every sefirah. We know that every partzuf, every complete partzuf, consists of 10 sefirot. Each one of those sefirot, they also have a measure of ratzon. They have a certain degree of desire. So, what's the greatest sefirah? If we're going by the desire, which one's the greatest sefirah? Malchut. Wow, interesting. Keter is the least desire, while Malchut is the greatest ratzon. It's the opposite of what we might think. We might think Keter is the greatest because it's the highest and it's the most purified. But in fact, that's what makes it the lowest in terms of desire. It's the greatest and the highest in terms of purity, which is the opposite of aviyut. As we're going to learn, the term aviyut refers to the thickness of the desire to receive the light, Lashem Shamayim. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but let's continue with Rav Ashlag. Shehari hitpashtut or ha'elyon min ha'ma'atzil hi vedai bli shi'ur v'midah. After all, the expansion of the upper light from the ma'atzil surely is without measure and size. There is no shi'ur, there is no midah, which means no measure, no limit to the light. Because remember, the light is or Ein Sof, it's without end. The light doesn't have any measurements. If you were to funnel in a certain type of a smoke into a room, it would slowly but surely fill up the entire room. Because it doesn't have any measurements. It takes up the shape or the form of the vessel that it's inside. That's the same thing with the light. The light doesn't have any form, but it takes the form of the vessel. Whenever it's in the vessel, that's what gives it its measurements. I think that's what it's going to say here. Ela rak hanetzal. Exactly. Instead, it's the receiver who haoseh shiur al hashefa mikoach atzmo. It's the ne'etzal that places measurements around the light from its own perspective. Mipa'at hayuto mekabel lo pachot velo yoter mikapai shiur chashko v'rotzono lekabel. For it receives not more and not less than the measure of its desire to receive. The vessel is incapable of receiving more or less than its desire to receive. That means the moment that you make space, the instant that you arouse ratzon, you get in touch with your soul, the moment you penetrate deeper within your soul, the light fulfills that vessel. The light occupies that space immediately, without delay. The moment there's a desire, the light occupies that space. If you're not totally fulfilled with the light of God right now, that means you're not in touch with your desire. This is where it becomes practical. Whenever you understand the concept of desire and the concept of higher levels of consciousness, what does it mean, higher level of consciousness? That means you've penetrated deeper into your desire. Because you are desire. You're made of desire. That's your substance. You're a receiver. We are made of the desire to receive. And we're here to transform that into a desire to share. Through receiving, you can share. Shezehu emet hamida hanohagat beruchaniut. Because this is the rule in spirituality. Mishum she'ein inyan hachpi noheg sham. Because there is no matter of coercion that is existing in spirituality. There is no such thing as forcing the vessel to receive. You cannot force the vessel to receive. The vessel must have the desire on its own to receive before it's able to receive. So since there is no such thing as coercion in spirituality, v'hakol talui b'ratzon. That means that it all depends on the desire. Ulefichach anu machnim et haratzon lekabel hazo. And therefore, we call this the desire to receive. Shehu kli kabbalah shel hanetzal, which is the receiving vessel of the ne'etzal. Vehu nivchan bebechinat hachomer shelo, and it is regarded as the aspect of the chomer, meaning the substance within it. Shemichmato yatsa miklol ma'atzil lehakro b'shem ne'etzal, and it emerges from the category of ma'atzil and becomes called ne'etzal. If you look at the word ma'atzil, it's spelled mem aleph tzadeh yud lamed. The word ne'etzal is the same thing, except it's with a nun, and it's lacking a yud, of course. What's the difference between mem and nun? Why is ma'atzil just one letter before ne'etzal? Mem is right before nun in the Hebrew alphabet, because it's trying to emphasize the cause and effect relationship. The ma'atzil comes before, the letter mem comes before, because it's the cause of the ne'etzal, of the letter nun, which is the recipient of the light from the mem. The mem gives light to the nun. So the moment that this ma'atzil acquires a desire to receive, it's no longer called ma'atzil. Now it's called ne'etzal, which is the emanation, the emanated, the item that receives the light, the vessel which is the vessel, the recipient of the shefa. Mitayim hayuto migoder b'mayin chomer kazeh she'eino mitzaveh b'ma'atzil af mashehu chas v'shalom. The reason is that this desire does not exist at all in the ma'atzil, God forbid. He uses the word chas v'shalom. God forbid you should think that the ma'atzil contains any desire to receive. God, which is the ma'atzil, He's the creator, He doesn't have any desire to receive, as we've talked about many times. He can't. Why? Not because He has a deficiency, but the other reason is because He's perfect. It's precisely because God is perfect that there's no reception in Him. He's only a giver. He's like a white hole. Black holes receive, receive, receive. The white holes, if such things exist, they spew out energy. They're the opposite of a recipient. And that's what God is. God is a singularity which spews out light. While a black hole, which is a recipient, like us, is a singularity which receives light. We take in the light. And we're trying to transform our darkness, meaning our black wholeness, into light, which means white hole. To be like God, exactly like God, which is a giver. כי הרצון לקבל אינו נוהג חס ושלום במעציל בהחלת שהרי ממי יקבל הבחן. Because the desire to receive does not appear within the ma'atzil chas v'shalom, for from who would he receive? He's asking a question because just think logically. Who would he receive from? Who's God going to receive from? If God is defined by the first being, then who could he possibly receive from? There's no one before him. There's no giver that can bestow to God. God is the bestower. God is the source of all givers. So I'm not trying to get so philosophical here, but he's just asking the question. It's just logic. Ma'atzil doesn't have any ratzon לקבל. ולהלן נבאר שיש בחומר הזה ד' מדרגות. This is where we're going to get a little bit technical. So put your thinking caps on. Below we're going to explain that within this chomer, within this substance of the vessel, which is defined by the desire to receive, there are dalid madragot. There are 4 levels. Mikatnut al gadlut, from smallness to greatness. Shehamadrega haravi'it, the greatest of whom is the 4th level. Shehi bechinat gedola mikabala, which is the greatest desire to receive. The 4th level, which is called bechinat dalid, that's what you call the desire to receive. It's the 4th level. Hamitsuya al shalimuta rak be'en sof miterem shenivra'u ha'olamot, which exists in its completion only before the tzimtzum, meaning in the endless, in the Ein Sof. It is specifically and only within the Ein Sof that bechinat dalid is fulfilled, that the measure of the desire to receive, ratzon lekabel, is fulfilled by the light. It's only in the endless. Hinerak aleha naaseh soda tzimtzum, upon which was placed the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum was placed only on bechinat dalid, on this 4th, meaning this greatest ratzon. The 4th degree, because there's 4 degrees. It says there's 4 levels of desire. There's bechinat aleph, bechinat bet, bechinat gimel. But bechinat dalid is the greatest one. The tzimtzum happened only on bechinat dalid. And you can only find bechinat dalid fulfilled with light in Ein Sof. That's what sets it apart from the first 3 madragot. We're going to learn it now. I'm just bringing more before we get there. Hinerak aleha naaseh sod tzimtzum, upon which the tzimtzum was placed only on bechinat dalid. Okay. Veit ba'er lehalan, and it will be explained below. Kinit rukna, that it was emptied. Mikol shefa shehaya la mi'echas Ein Sof, of all the light. It was emptied from all of the light that it received from the Ein Sof. V'nishara bebechinat chalal, and it remained in a state of chalal. Chalal means void. Bechinat dalid remains in a state of void after the tzimtzum. Let's take a pause, take